Picture this. You are standing deep inside a stone passage tomb, the air cool and still, the darkness so complete it feels like another world. Then, as if on cue, a single narrow beam of sunlight cuts through the blackness, striking a spiral carving on the far wall with impossible precision. This is not a scene from a fantasy novel. This was reality for ancient people over 5,000 years ago. This moment, occurring only once a year during the winter solstice, was the result of meticulous planning, profound astronomical understanding, and a deep spiritual vision that connected architecture directly to the cosmos. These builders, known as the architects of light, did not merely construct buildings, they engineered experiences, turning stone and sunlight into a language of gods, time, and the human soul. Across the ancient world, from the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Mesoamerica, master builders achieved what seems almost magical to us today. They designed windows, doorways, and openings that acted as celestial calculators, tracking the sun's journey with jaw-dropping accuracy. But these were more than just early calendars, they were spiritual instruments. A beam of light on a solstice morning wasn't just marking the turn of the season. It was believed to carry the presence of a god, to awaken the spirits of ancestors, or to guide the souls of the departed. In a world without electric light, without satellites or smartphones, these architects used what they had: stone, shadow, and the unwavering patterns of the sky to create moments of pure wonder. In this video, we are going to journey back in time to uncover how these ancient cultures harnessed light not just to tell time, but to touch the divine. We'll explore the hidden science behind structures like Newgrange and the Pyramid of the Sun, decode the myths that gave meaning to these solar events, and discover how beliefs about the soul's journey were literally built into the architecture. You'll come away with a new appreciation for the intelligence and imagination of our ancestors, and perhaps see the play of light through your own window in a completely new way. This is the story of how humanity first learned to read the sky, and in doing so, wrote its dreams in stone. So who were these brilliant minds behind these celestial designs? The term architects of light doesn't refer to a single guild or a secret society, but rather to a fascinating array of anonymous or semi-mythical figures across countless ancient cultures. They were the masterminds, the druids of Neolithic Europe, the priest astronomers of Egypt, the Maya sky watchers of Mesoamerica, who possessed a rare and profound synthesis of skills. To call them merely architects or engineers would be a vast understatement. They were, in truth, polymaths, deeply spiritual leaders, meticulous scientists, and visionary artists all rolled into one. Their true medium was not just stone, but sunlight itself. Their canvas was the annual journey of the sun across the sky. They had to be part astronomer, tracking the meticulous movements of celestial bodies with nothing but the naked eye and patient, generational observation. They had to be part mathematician, calculating precise angles and alignments that would hold true for centuries. And they had to be part theologian, weaving these empirical observations into the very fabric of their culture's mythological narratives and spiritual beliefs. This unique blend of roles meant they were seen as powerful intermediaries, the crucial link between the earthly realm and the divine. In Celtic traditions, for example, these figures were believed to hold the knowledge of the sacred rhythms of nature, capable of communicating with the gods and ensuring the harmony between the people and the cosmos. Their ultimate creation was a building that served a dual, inseparable purpose. It was both a precise astronomical observatory and an active temple for worship. The structure itself became a machine for generating awe, a device that transformed the abstract concept of a solstice into a tangible, breathtaking event that entire communities could witness together. By studying their methods, we gain an incredible window into the ancient mind. We see how these societies perceived the very nature of time, not as a linear countdown, but as a sacred, cyclical rhythm. We understand how they viewed their place in a vast universe and how they conceptualized the journey of the human soul within that grand cosmic order. This foundational understanding of who they were is the essential first step, because it frames everything that follows not as coincidence or primitive superstition, but as the deliberate, genius work of some of history's most sophisticated and holistic thinkers. So if these master builders were the visionary minds behind the operation, the windows they designed were the precise instruments that made their vision a reality. To our modern eyes, a window is a commonplace feature, a simple opening for air, light, or a view of the outside world. But in the hands of the architects of light, a window was transformed into something far more potent, a calibrated astronomical device and a sacred portal. These were not the large glass-paned openings we know today. They were often narrow shafts, carefully aligned slots, or strategically placed doorways, each one engineered with a singular, profound purpose, to capture a specific beam of light or shadow at a precise moment in the annual celestial cycle. Think of them not as windows, but as the lenses of a giant stone camera obscura, designed to project the sun's image onto a very specific target deep within a temple or tomb. The target itself was never arbitrary. This beam of light might be intended to strike the center of a carved spiral, to gradually illuminate a statue of a deity, to bisect a specific pool of water, or to trace the length of a ceremonial corridor. Each interaction was packed with meaning. In Egyptian temples like the magnificent Karnak, certain inner sanctuaries were designed to remain in total darkness for most of the year. But on the morning of the summer solstice, a precisely oriented window or shaft would allow a single ray of sunlight to penetrate the gloom, striking the statue of Amun-Ra or another god. This wasn't just a pretty light show. It was a direct, tangible manifestation of the god's presence and approval, a divine recharge of the temple's spiritual power that priests could use to reinforce their authority and the faith of the people. This intentional design philosophy turned static, immovable architecture into a dynamic interface with the cosmos. The building itself became a participant in the ritual, an active agent that could tell time, announce festivals, and facilitate communication with the divine. Light was the messenger, and the window was the receiving station. This deep integration of function and symbolism meant that even the most mundane architectural element was imbued with layers of meaning. A simple opening in a wall was no longer just a hole. It was a sacred conduit, a cosmic clock, and a storyteller all at once. It wove together empirical astronomical science with deep spiritual belief, creating a seamless fabric where the sacred and the scientific were one and the same, deeply embedded into the very rhythm of daily and seasonal life. To truly grasp the brilliance of these ancient architects, we first need to understand the celestial clock they were reading. The solstices and equinoxes were not just abstract astronomical terms. They were the fundamental heartbeat of ancient life, the undeniable turning points that shaped everything from survival to spirituality. Picture the two solstices as the extreme boundaries of the sun's annual journey. The summer solstice marks the longest day of the year, a peak of light and warmth, while the winter solstice is its opposite, the shortest day, the deepest point of darkness and cold. The equinoxes occurring in spring and autumn are the moments of perfect balance when day and night are of equal length. For us today, these might be mere calendar notations, but for ancient agricultural societies, they were absolutely critical. The summer solstice signaled the approaching time for harvest, a period of intense activity and hope for a bounty that would last through the winter. The winter solstice, though bleak, was a moment of profound hope, the undeniable turning point where the sun began its return, promising the eventual rebirth of spring and the vital planting season. The equinoxes were similarly pivotal. The spring equinox was a call to prepare the fields, while the autumn equinox was a time to give thanks and prepare for the inward turn of the colder months. These celestial events were so much more than practical agricultural markers. They were woven into the very fabric of mythology and religion. In countless cultures, the winter solstice was seen as a cosmic battle where a sun god or hero triumphed over darkness, leading to celebrations of rebirth and renewal. The summer solstice, brimming with potent solar energy, was often associated with peak power, fertility, and the reign of mighty deities. The equinoxes, those moments of perfect equilibrium, were viewed as times of heightened spiritual accessibility, when the veil between the human world and the spirit world was at its thinnest. This is where the genius of the architects of light truly shines. They understood that to make these intangible cosmic events tangible, they needed to build a physical experience. They designed their structures to literally frame these moments, using windows, doorways, and aligned passages to capture the sun's rays at the exact instant of sunrise or sunset on these specific days. A famous and powerful example is Stonehenge in England. On the summer solstice, if you stand in the center of the stone circle, you will see the sun rise directly over the heel stone, its rays pouring through the monument's architecture in a breathtaking spectacle. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a meticulously planned event designed to fill a community with awe and reinforce their connection to a larger cosmic order. By creating these dramatic communal experiences, the architects provided proof of the cosmic cycle. The returning sun, perfectly framed by stone, was a physical manifestation of the promises held within their myths. It was a reassurance that the gods were in their heaven and the natural order was intact. This practice transformed their understanding of time from a simple linear progression into a sacred, cyclical rhythm. It allowed people to feel personally connected to the universe's grand mechanics, seeing these solstices and equinoxes as sacred portals, times for not just celebration, but for deep spiritual communication, reflection on the past year, and prayer for the year to come. The architecture became the interface for this connection, a permanent stone calendar and a church under the open sky, all in one. Now, to truly appreciate the breathtaking skill of these ancient sky watchers, we need to look at a real-world masterpiece, a structure that stands as a perfect testament to their genius, the Neolithic passage tomb of Newgrange in Ireland. Built over 5,000 years ago, around 3,200 BCE, this massive circular mound of stone and earth is older than both Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Giza. For most of the year, its interior is a place of profound, silent darkness, but for a few precious minutes around the winter solstice, something miraculous happens. High above the entrance, a feature known uniquely as the roof box, a small, carefully constructed window-like opening catches the first, faint rays of the rising sun. A narrow beam of light, no wider than a modern pencil, begins its journey. It travels down the long, narrow passageway, a distance of nearly 19 meters, until it finally reaches the central chamber deep within the heart of the mound. There, for approximately 17 minutes, this golden finger of light illuminates intricate spiral and diamond-shaped carvings on the back wall, bringing the ancient stone art to life in a dazzling display before retreating once more into darkness. The symbolism of this event is incredibly powerful and deeply moving. For a Neolithic farming community, the winter solstice was the lowest point of the year, the shortest day, the longest night, a time of cold, scarcity, and uncertainty. The sun, the source of all life and warmth, seemed at its weakest. To witness its light not only return but be actively invited into the deepest, most sacred space, to literally pierce the darkness of the tomb, would have been an overwhelmingly emotional experience. This was far more than a calendar marker. It was a profound myth enacted in stone and light. It powerfully linked the cyclical rebirth of the sun in the sky with the human belief in rebirth and regeneration in the afterlife. The light entering the burial chamber was likely seen as a spiritual awakening, a moment when the souls of the ancestors within were warmed and honored by the sun's life-giving force, or perhaps even a pathway for those souls to journey to the other world. It transformed the tomb from a static place of death into a dynamic portal of renewal, a physical guarantee that just as the sun returns, so too does life in some form continue. The astronomical precision required to achieve this effect is what truly staggers the modern mind. The builders did not have written language, metal tools, or complex instruments. Their achievement was born from generations of patient observation, meticulous record-keeping, and an intimate knowledge of their local horizon. They had to understand the sun's shifting path along the horizon with incredible accuracy, noting its most southerly stopping point at the winter solstice. Then they had to translate that celestial knowledge into a terrestrial design, orienting the entire 76,000-kilogram structure and its long passage to an exact azimuth. The roof box itself is a marvel of engineering. Its slab is set at a precise angle to capture the sun when it is just barely above the horizon, and its opening is of a specific height and width to control the beam's duration and shape. This was not a rough approximation. It was a feat of Neolithic engineering that would be challenging to replicate even today without modern technology. It speaks to a sophisticated communal knowledge system passed down through oral tradition and practical application, proving that these so-called primitive people were, in fact, master astronomers and architects. Newgrange is the ultimate case study, a perfect fusion of deep mythic belief and hard scientific observation, where a simple window in a wall became a sacred instrument for connecting the world of the living with the cycles of the cosmos and the realm of the ancestors. While the Neolithic builders of Europe were mastering the solstice sun, an ocean and a continent away, the ancient Egyptians were engineering their own breathtaking dialogues with the heavens, but with a distinctly different theological purpose. If Newgrange was a tomb designed to welcome the sun's life-giving force for the ancestors, Egyptian temples were machines for manifesting the divine on earth for the living. These were not quiet, remote monuments. They were the bustling, powerful heart of the state, the economy, and the cosmos itself. And within these vast stone complexes, windows and light shafts were not merely architectural features. They were the meticulously designed pathways through which the gods themselves traveled. The most spectacular example is perhaps the great temple of Ramses II at Abu Simbel. Most of the year, its inner sanctum lies in a deep, solemn darkness. But on two specific days, traditionally believed to be the 21st of February and the 21st of October, dates flanking the solstices and possibly correlating with the king's birthday and coronation day, a truly miraculous event occurs. As the sun rises, a beam of light pierces the temple's long, narrow entrance. It cuts through the outer hall, past the towering colossal statues, and travels over 60 meters into the mountain itself to illuminate the innermost shrine. There, in a chamber meant only for the high priesthood, the light sequentially illuminates three statues of gods, Ptah, Amun-Ra, and the deified pharaoh Ramses himself. Remarkably, the fourth statue in the group, the god of darkness Ptah, remains forever in shadow. This was not a happy accident. It was celestial engineering of the highest order, a calculated demonstration that even the sun itself obeyed the pharaoh's divine command and honored him as an equal among the gods. This theme of divine illumination was repeated throughout Egypt. At the massive Karnak temple complex dedicated to the god Amun-Ra, alignments were designed around the heliacal rising of Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. Known to the Egyptians as Sopdet, its first pre-dawn appearance after a period of invisibility marked the imminent, life-giving Nile flood and the beginning of their new year. Priests would have observed this celestial event from within the temple's confines, and certain shafts or aligned corridors may have been designed to frame this star's rebirth, connecting the cyclical renewal of the cosmos directly to the rituals performed within the temple walls. The light from these celestial bodies was never seen as just impersonal radiation. In Egyptian theology, it was the physical embodiment of the goddess Mat, representing cosmic order, truth, and justice. It was also the visible form of the god Ra's power, his divine energy made manifest. This is where the profound mythology intertwines with the architecture. The Egyptians believed the sun god Ra traveled across the sky each day in a solar bark, a divine boat. At night, he journeyed through the perilous underworld to be reborn at dawn. The temple itself was seen as a microcosm of this universe. Its pylons were the horizon, its hypostyle hall the primordial swamp of creation, and its dark inner sanctuary the underworld. When a shaft of sunlight pierced that ultimate darkness and struck the cult statue of the god, it was the moment of divine rebirth happening right before the priest's eyes. It was the awakening of the god's spirit within its physical statue, a daily reenactment of creation that charged the entire temple with power. This power was believed to radiate outwards, ensuring the fertility of the land, the stability of the kingdom, and the pharaoh's ability to act as the intermediary between gods and men. The priesthood, being the savvy administrators they were, understood the immense psychological and political power of these light phenomena. By controlling access to these awe-inspiring events, they reinforced a strict religious dogma and the absolute God-given authority of the pharaoh. The common people were never allowed into these inner sanctums. They gathered in the outer courtyards. Only the highest priests witnessed the actual moment of illumination, emerging afterwards to describe the miracle and distribute the now sanctified offerings. This created a powerful monopoly on divine access, making the temple and the state it represented the essential, irreplaceable conduit for maintaining cosmic order. The strategic placement of a window or the precise angle of a shaft was therefore far more than an astronomical alignment. It was a tool of statecraft, a theological argument set in stone, and a direct hotline to the divine that made the abstract concept of a god's blessing a tangible, unforgettable reality for every citizen. Moving from the monumental state temples of Egypt, we journey across the Atlantic to the vibrant, jungle-clad cities of the Maya and the awe-inspiring island capital of the Aztecs, where the architects of light engineered a different kind of celestial dialogue, one where the cosmos didn't just illuminate a god, but actively descended to walk among the people. In Mesoamerica, architecture and astronomy fused into a public spectacle, a communal theater where the entire city could witness the gods manifesting through the perfect interplay of shadow and stone. The most iconic example of this is the breathtaking phenomenon at the Pyramid of Kukulkan, also known as El Castillo, at Chichen Itza. This magnificent step pyramid is not just a solid mound of stone, it is a meticulously designed astronomical instrument. On the afternoons of the spring and autumn equinoxes, as the sun begins its descent, a mesmerizing play of light and shadow unfolds. The stepped corners of the pyramid cast a series of 7 interlocking triangles of shadow down the northern staircase. These shadows connect with the massive stone serpent heads at the base, creating the undulating, diamond-backed body of a giant serpent that appears to slither down from the heavens to the earth. This is the feathered serpent god Kukulkan or Quetzalcoatl to the Aztecs, making his annual descent to bless the land with rain and fertility, and his subsequent ascent back to the sky. This was not a hidden event for priests alone. It was a grand public performance designed to unite the entire community in a shared experience of divine wonder, reinforcing the social and spiritual order through a display of undeniable celestial power. This architectural genius extended beyond grand pyramids to specialized observatories. The Maya structure known as El Caracol, or the Snail, at Chichen Itza is a clear testament to their sophisticated focus on the sky. Its unique circular tower, set on a large rectangular platform, resembles a modern observatory. Archaeoastronomers have discovered that its narrow, strategically placed windows and sightlines are precisely aligned with the extreme rising and setting points of Venus on the horizon. For the Maya, Venus was not a benign planet. It was a deity closely associated with war and conflict, its cycles dictating the timing of raids and military campaigns. A ruler could literally look through a specific window in El Caracol, see Venus in a predicted position, and know the gods had sanctioned his plans. Other alignments tracked the solstices and equinoxes, turning the entire building into a multi-functional celestial calendar carved in stone. This deep integration of astronomy into daily life was managed through their incredibly complex and accurate calendar systems. The Maya used an interlocking system of cycles, the Hob, a 365-day solar calendar that tracked the seasons for agriculture, and the Tzolk'in, a 260-day sacred calendar used for religious ceremonies and divination. The convergence of these cycles, along with the precise tracking of Venus and other celestial bodies, allowed the Maya to plan their entire societal rhythm around the cosmos. Planting, harvesting, religious festivals, coronations, and even warfare were all scheduled in accordance with these celestial cycles. The windows and alignments in their architecture were the physical manifestation of this calendar, the hardwired proof that their mathematical calculations were correct and that the ruler who embodied this knowledge held a divine mandate. The cosmological view that fueled this architecture was profoundly different from a detached scientific observation. The Maya and Aztecs saw the cosmos as a living, breathing, and often perilous entity. The sun was not just a ball of gas. It was a god that required nourishment, sometimes in the form of human blood and hearts, to continue its daily journey across the sky and defeat the forces of darkness. A failed alignment, a missed equinox, or an unseen planetary event wasn't just an error. It was a potential cosmic catastrophe, a sign that the rituals had failed and the universe might unravel. Therefore, the windows and doorways in their pyramids were far more than architectural features. They were the eyes of the temple, constantly watching the sky. They were sacred conduits ensuring the flow of divine time and energy into the human world, and crucial instruments for maintaining the fragile balance of existence itself. The Mesoamerican architects of light were therefore master timekeepers, high priests, and political strategists all at once, using their profound understanding of the heavens to build a world where myth became visible, and the will of the gods was written in light and shadow for all to see. But the vision of these ancient architects extended far beyond marking time or honoring gods. It reached into the most intimate human questions about life, death, and what lies beyond. Across countless cultures, light was universally understood as the closest physical parallel to the human soul itself. It was invisible yet undeniable, weightless yet powerful, ephemeral yet eternal. It represented enlightenment, the spark of consciousness, purity, and the very essence of life. When a person died, many cultures believed this inner light didn't simply vanish. It embarked on a journey, and the structures built by the architects of light were designed to guide it home. This profound belief system transformed a functional window alignment into a sacred gateway. In Norse and broader Germanic traditions, for example, burial mounds were often constructed with a small, carefully oriented opening, sometimes called a soul hole or light door. This wasn't for the living to peer inside, but for the soul of the deceased within to have a pathway. It was believed that on specific days, particularly during the solstices or other potent solar events, the spirit of the ancestor could travel along the beam of light that entered through this portal, momentarily returning to the world of the living to communicate, offer guidance, or receive offerings from their descendants. The window was a two-way street between realms, a permanent architectural feature ensuring the family lineage, both physical and spiritual, remained unbroken. This symbolism is powerfully evident in the very designs they chose to illuminate. The spiral carvings famously lit by the solstice sun at Newgrange are a perfect example. To the modern eye, they are abstract art, but to the Neolithic mind, the spiral was likely a potent symbol of the soul's journey, a representation of cyclical rebirth, the twisting path between worlds, or the unfolding of consciousness. To have the sun's life-giving ray trace this very symbol once a year was a dramatic reinforcement of the belief that the soul, like the sun, would also return from the darkness. Similarly, in Egyptian mythology, the sun god Ra-Bark didn't just carry a ball of fire. It carried the souls of the justified dead across the sky, with the sunlight itself being their divine transport. The light shafts in pyramids and temples were therefore not just for the god's statue. They were celestial runways for the pharaoh's soul to ascend and join this eternal crew. This deep, symbolic layer is what elevates these structures from brilliant engineering to profound spiritual architecture. The architects of light were building comfort for the living as much as they were building monuments for the dead or the divine. In a world without answers, they provided a tangible, predictable, and beautiful reassurance. They created spaces where a community could gather and witness with their own eyes a physical manifestation of their deepest hopes, that the soul was real, that death was not an end, and that the ones they loved were still connected to the cycles of the cosmos. The beam of light piercing the darkness was the ultimate symbol of hope, a bridge made of pure energy spanning the chasm between the mortal, earthly realm and what they believed was the eternal, luminous realm of the spirit. By designing for this moment, the architects gave people a way to touch the intangible, using the most fundamental force in the universe to answer the most fundamental questions of the human heart. Considering they lacked computers, GPS, or even basic telescopes, the precision achieved by these ancient builders seems almost supernatural. Yet their methods, while simple in concept, were born from generations of meticulous observation and a deep, patient intimacy with the sky. They didn't need complex technology because they had the most powerful tool of all, time itself, measured in human lifetimes and passed down through stories, songs, and shared knowledge. One of their most fundamental tools was the humble gnomon, a simple vertical stick placed in the ground. By carefully tracking the moving shadow it cast throughout the day and across the seasons, they could map the sun's entire journey. The shortest shadow of the day marked local noon, while the longest and shortest shadows of the year pinpointed the solstices with remarkable accuracy. They could literally draw a circle in the dirt around the gnomon and mark where the shadow's tip fell at different times, creating a permanent, renewable solar calendar etched into the Earth. This basic principle allowed them to establish true north, south, east, and west with a precision that still baffles modern surveyors, simply by observing the symmetrical arc of a shadow over a single day. For more permanent and grand structures, they likely employed a process of trial and error over many years. Imagine teams of observers stationed at a potential temple site, using wooden frames or stretched cords to simulate the intended doorways and windows. They would note where the sun rose on the horizon on a key date like the summer solstice, and then erect a temporary marker, a large stone, a post, or even a mound of earth. They would return year after year to refine this alignment, perhaps waiting for a generation to pass to confirm their calculations. The use of reflective surfaces, like still pools of water, could have allowed them to see and precisely mark celestial events happening behind them, or to double-check an alignment by observing a reflection. The Egyptians are known to have used an instrument called a merkit, a narrow, notched palm rib that functioned like a sighting tool. A priest astronomer would use two of them, aligning their notches with a specific star like Polaris or the circumpolar stars that never set, thus establishing a true meridian line, a perfect north-south axis against which all other temple alignments could be measured. This was the foundation upon which their colossal sacred geometry was built. The true genius of this system lay not in any single tool, but in the communal and intergenerational transfer of knowledge. This wasn't a science written in textbooks. It was a living tradition encoded in myth, ritual, and oral instruction. The specific alignment for a winter solstice sunrise might be remembered as the day the sun god battled the serpent of darkness, and the stories told around the fire would contain the precise astronomical knowledge needed to mark that day. A master builder would teach his apprentice not just how to place a stone, but why it was placed at that exact angle, embedding the celestial reason within a spiritual narrative. This ensured the knowledge was preserved, revered, and accurately passed on for centuries. Their success is a powerful reminder that advanced technology isn't always about complexity. Sometimes it's about thoughtful observation, profound patience, and a harmonious adaptation to the natural world's existing rhythms. They listened to the sky, and the sky, in return, gave them the blueprint. This deep connection between stone and sky was far too powerful to be explained by engineering alone. It demanded a story, a grand narrative that could capture its wonder and embed it into the very soul of a culture. And so, from these breathtaking alignments, mythology was born. The beam of light striking a carved spiral wasn't just a solar marker, it became the path of a god. The window framing the equinox sunrise wasn't just an architectural feature, it was a temporary portal to the other world. These myths were the human mind's way of giving meaning to the magnificent, transforming cold, hard astronomical precision into warm, living epic lore that could be passed down for generations. In the rich tapestry of Greek mythology, we find Hyperion, one of the primordial titans whose very name means the High One, or he who goes above. He was the titan of heavenly light, the father of the sun, the moon, and the dawn. While not exclusively a god of windows, the concept of light entering a sacred space through a specific opening would have been deeply tied to his essence. A shaft of light piercing the dark inner chamber of a temple could easily be envisioned as Hyperion's gaze, or a fragment of his divine power, momentarily touching the human world to bless it. This wasn't just a pretty metaphor, it was a theological framework that made the universe feel personal and intentional. The architecture provided the stage, and the myth provided the play, with the sunbeam as the starring actor. Crossing into the misty highlands and green forests of the Celtic world, the mythology takes on a more mystical, folkloric quality. Here, the liminal times of the solstices, especially the thin veil of the summer and winter sunstands, were believed to be moments when the boundaries between the human world and the realm of the Aos-Shi, the fairy folk, grew porous. A suddenly appearing beam of light in a dense forest glen or shining through a perfectly aligned stone doorway at dawn on these days wasn't just light, it was a fairy door, a temporary gateway. These stories served as both warning and invitation. They warned people to be respectful and cautious during these powerful times, lest they accidentally stray into the fairy realm and be trapped for 100 years. But they also invited a sense of magic and possibility, a belief that the world was far more mysterious and interconnected than it appeared in the dull light of an ordinary day. The practical, observed solar event became the trigger for an entire system of belief about the unseen world existing just alongside our own. The true brilliance of this interplay between myth and masonry lies in its function as an ancient knowledge preservation system. In cultures without widespread literacy, complex astronomical data cannot be stored in books. It must be stored in story. The precise azimuth needed to capture the winter solstice sunrise is a difficult number to remember, but a thrilling tale about a hero who must defeat a dragon of darkness on the year's longest night, and can only do so when the first ray of sun enters the cave to illuminate his sword, is unforgettable. Each retelling of that myth, each performance of that ritual, implicitly passed on the crucial timing of that celestial event. The grandmother telling the story by the fire was, in effect, a scientist preserving an ephemeris. The children listening were not just being entertained, they were learning on a deep, subconscious level the most important rhythms of their universe. The building itself became a mnemonic device, a three-dimensional storybook whose pages were turned by the sun itself. This symbiotic relationship meant that the myth gave the building its soul, and the building gave the myth its proof. A story about a sun god is a nice tale, but a story about a sun god who actually appears in a flash of light in your local temple every year on the same day is a foundation for faith. The structure validated the narrative, and the narrative explained the structure, creating a powerful feedback loop that reinforced cultural identity, spiritual belief, and scientific understanding all at once. The architects of light, therefore, were not just builders and astronomers, they were myth-makers. They understood that to make knowledge last, it had to be woven into the very stories a people told about themselves and their gods. They built in stone and story simultaneously, creating monuments that were not cold and dead, but living texts of belief and wonder, whose most sacred chapters were read aloud by the sun once a year. While the solstices and equinoxes provided the grand, unmistakable pillars of the year, the true genius of these ancient calendars lay in their granularity, their ability to mark the subtle, yet equally vital, moments in between. The architects of light designed their windows to do far more than just capture the four major solar events. They created intricate systems that tracked the entire tapestry of the annual cycle, weaving together solar, lunar, and even stellar observations into a comprehensive guide for living. This transformed their structures from occasional spectacle generators into continuous, functioning timepieces, their stone faces reading like the pages of an eternal, celestial almanac. A stunning example of this sophisticated timekeeping is the Mnajdra Temple complex on the coast of Malta, a site that is truly a masterclass in Neolithic astronomical engineering. Built over 5,000 years ago, its southern temple is a precise instrument for tracking the sun's journey. Everyone talks about the dramatic solstice sunrises, where the sun's rays pierce the main doorway to illuminate a central slab. But the real magic is in the finer details. The temple's megalithic walls are peppered with smaller holes and apertures, On the equinoxes, a distinct shaft of light projects through one of these openings to strike a specific marker stone with pinpoint accuracy. Even more remarkably, archaeologists have noted that the same aperture system casts light patterns that align with the so-called cross-quarter days, the midpoints between a solstice and an equinox. These days, which we now know as the Celtic festivals of Imbolc, Beltane, Lughnasadh, and Samhain, were critical ancient markers for pastoral and agricultural life. They signaled the beginning of lambing season, the time to move cattle to summer pastures, the start of the harvest, and the onset of winter. At Najdra, a sliver of light touching a particular corner of the temple on a specific morning would have been the official, undeniable signal to an entire community that it was time to undertake these essential tasks. The temple wasn't just marking time, it was issuing direct, actionable commands from the cosmos itself. This concept of a light-based calendar was a global phenomenon, adapted to local needs and environments. In the American Southwest, the ancestral Puebloan people, often referred to as the Anasazi, engineered a breathtakingly simple yet effective system. At sites like Choco Canyon and Fajada Butte, they created sun dagger spirals or other symbols pecked into cliff faces behind carefully positioned rock slabs. Throughout the year, shafts of sunlight would pass between these slabs, projecting a moving dagger of light onto the petroglyph. On the solstices and equinoxes, the light would bisect the spiral perfectly. But on other days, the dagger would touch different points, creating a moving scale that could track the sun's progress for weeks before and after these major events. It was a public sundial on a monumental scale, allowing everyone from farmers to religious leaders to know exactly where they were in the seasonal cycle, without needing a single written word or formal ceremony. The societal impact of these architectural calendars cannot be overstated. They were the beating heart of ancient civilization, synchronizing every aspect of communal life. The precise timing of religious festivals, which were often linked to agricultural thanksgiving or appeals to the gods for rain and sun, relied on these light signals. The scheduling of regional trade fairs where communities would gather to exchange goods was dictated by these celestial milestones. Even governance and the collection of tributes were often tied to these cycles, embedding the cosmic order into the very fabric of law and economy. The architect of light, in designing these structures, was therefore the chief timekeeper, the head planner, the master of ceremonies for an entire culture. They took the utterly abstract, flowing river of time and froze it into a series of tangible, predictable moments in stone and light. A farmer didn't need to understand the complex axial tilt of the earth. He simply needed to see the sunbeam hit the third notch on the temple wall to know it was time to plant his seeds. This democratization of celestial knowledge fostered a profound sense of security and order. It reassured people that they were living in harmony with a vast, intelligent universe, that their labors were perfectly timed to nature's rhythm, and that their place within this grand, orderly system was both intentional and secure. These celestial alignments were far more than a passive light show for ancient spectators. They were the central stage for some of humanity's most profound and unifying spiritual practices. Imagine the palpable buzz of anticipation in the air as an entire community, from the highest priest to the youngest child, gathered in the pre-dawn darkness of the winter solstice. They had endured the longest night of the year, huddled against the cold, their food stores dwindling. Their collective hope was physically manifested in the stone structure before them, a temple or tomb designed to literally harness the sun. As the first sliver of light finally breached the horizon and began its slow, deliberate journey through a precisely engineered window, the crowd wouldn't have watched in silent, scientific curiosity. This was a moment of pure collective catharsis. A roar of relief, joy, and fervent prayer would have surely erupted as the golden beam touched the sacred symbol within, a tangible sign that the gods had heard them, that the sun was indeed returning, and that life would continue. This shared experience of awe was the ultimate social glue, transforming a group of individuals into a unified culture with a common purpose and a shared destiny under the cosmos. The rituals performed during these events were deeply symbolic, designed to mirror the celestial drama unfolding above and within the architecture. In Egypt's magnificent Opet festival, which was timed around the Nile's inundation and involved key solar alignments at Karnak Temple, the highlight was a ritual procession. The statues of the gods Amun, Mut, and Khonsu were placed in ceremonial barks and carried by priests from Karnak to the Temple of Luxor. This journey was a reenactment of the sun god's journey across the sky and his symbolic renewal of the pharaoh's divine power. The participation of the entire population of Thebes lining the route, singing hymns, and making offerings wasn't just entertainment. It was a mandatory act of civic and religious duty that reinforced the societal hierarchy and the pharaoh's role as the indispensable intermediary between the people and the gods. The light alignments within the temple that preceded the festival were the divine signal that the event could commence, making the architecture itself the director of the entire ceremonial production. Beyond grand state festivals, these light-guided rituals served essential psychological and communal functions. For a farming community, the successful prediction of the solstice was a matter of literal life and death. A failed harvest meant starvation. By gathering to witness the sun perform its promised miracle within their sacred structure, they were collectively alleviating their deepest anxieties. The ritual offerings of grain, wine, or precious objects were not just gifts to the gods. They were investments in their own future, acts of faith that helped manage the terrifying uncertainty of nature. The shared chants, the rhythmic dancing, the collective gasps as the light appeared, all of these elements created a powerful state of group consciousness, what sociologists call communitas. In this state, everyday social divisions would momentarily melt away, replaced by a profound sense of equality and connection to each other and to the universe. This annual renewal of social bonds was crucial for maintaining cooperation throughout the year, ensuring that communities remained cohesive and supportive, especially during the difficult winter months. The architects of light understood this psychology intuitively. They weren't just building for structural integrity or astronomical accuracy. They were engineering emotional and spiritual experiences. They carefully choreographed the approach to the site, the acoustics within the chambers, and the precise timing of the light's appearance to maximize dramatic impact. The journey down a long, dark, narrow passageway at Newgrange, for instance, builds a sense of anticipation and separation from the mundane world. The sudden, explosive appearance of the sunbeam in the inner chamber after minutes of darkness is a classic technique of sensory contrast, guaranteed to trigger a powerful emotional release. This transformative moment was the catalyst. It took the intellectual understanding of a solar event and seared it into the heart as a spiritual truth. The architecture, therefore, was never a passive container. It was an active agent, a participant in the ritual that shaped human experience, forged community identity, and provided a stable, predictable point of light, both literal and metaphorical, around which an entire culture could orient its calendar, its labor, and its very soul. What's truly remarkable is how this drive to build with light wasn't confined to one corner of the globe. It was a universal human impulse, a shared spark of genius that ignited independently across continents and oceans, among cultures that could never have known of each other's existence. From the sun-drenched plains of India to the misty highlands of Scotland, and from the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Central America, we find an almost eerie repetition of the same brilliant idea, using architecture to capture and converse with the heavens. This profound similarity forces us to ask a tantalizing question. Was this some ancient form of knowledge transfer, a silent diffusion of ideas along forgotten trade routes? Or does it point to something even more fundamental, a deep, innate human response to the cosmos that we all share? Consider the magnificent Konark Sun Temple in India, a staggering 13th century structure designed as a colossal stone chariot for the sun god Surya, pulled by 7 horses. Its entire design is a precise astronomical instrument. The main tower, though now partially ruined, was built so that the first rays of the sunrise would strike the main entrance and gradually illuminate the temple's interior in a specific choreographed sequence. This is a direct parallel to the solar alignments we see in Egyptian temples like Abu Simbel, where light was used to announce the presence and power of a deity on a specific holy day. Half a world away, in the American Southwest, the ancestral Pueblones constructed their great houses in Choco Canyon with precise alignments to the solstice sun and the complex 18.6-year cycle of the moon. A single shaft of light, known as the sun dagger, would slice between massive rock slabs on Fajoda, but to bisect a spiral petroglyph at exactly noon on the summer solstice, a public solar calendar echoing the function of the light shafts in the much older Maltese temples of Mnajdra. Even the specific symbols used by these distant cultures reveal a parallel language of light. The serpent, a powerful symbol of rebirth and life force due to its ability to shed its skin, appears again and again in conjunction with solar alignments. At Chichen Itza in Mexico, the descent of the feathered serpent god Kukulkan during the equinox is the most famous example, but travel to the Callanish stones on the Isle of Lewis in Scotland, and you'll find a megalithic arrangement that some researchers believe was designed to create a serpentine shadow pattern that moves with the rising moon. This isn't to say these cultures shared a unified religion. They absolutely did not. But they did share a common human tendency to use the same powerful symbols to explain the same profound natural cycles they were observing. So how do we explain this widespread phenomenon? Scholars have long debated the why behind these parallels, and the discussion generally splits into 2 camps. On one side are the diffusionists, who argue that these ideas could have spread slowly over millennia through ancient trade networks, migrations, or contacts we no longer have a record of. It's a compelling thought, the notion of a master builder traveling from one civilization to another, sharing a revolutionary idea about aligning a doorway with the winter sunrise. On the other side are the proponents of independent invention, who argue that the common environmental challenge of surviving in a pre-industrial world naturally led to a common solution. After all, every single human culture, no matter how isolated, looked up and saw the same sun, the same moon, and the same stars performing the same predictable dance. It's only natural that many of them, in their quest to understand time, seasons, and their place in the universe, would arrive at a similar conclusion, that the most powerful way to mark these cycles was to build them permanently into their most sacred spaces. This global perspective doesn't diminish their achievements, it makes them infinitely more awe-inspiring. It suggests that the desire to find meaning in the patterns of the sky is a fundamental part of what makes us human. Whether it was a druid in Ireland, a priest in India, or a shaman in Choco Canyon, the architects of light were all addressing the same fundamental, existential questions. What is time? What is the soul? What is our place in this vast cosmos? They may have arrived at different mythological answers, but they all chose the same breathtaking medium to express them: the silent, enduring, and universal language of stone and light. Yet for all their brilliance and profound cultural significance, this deep celestial wisdom did not last forever. The intricate practice of tracking the heavens through stone and shadow, a tradition that had guided humanity for millennia, began to fade. The rise of powerful, centralized empires with new state religions often sidelined the older, earth-based spiritual practices. The spread of monotheistic faiths, which frequently located the divine in a single, unseen god rather than in the cyclical movements of the sun and stars, made many of these solar alignments seem like pagan superstition. Then came the relentless march of industrialization, which brought with it artificial light and mechanical clocks, severing humanity's fundamental reliance on the natural rhythms of the sky. Why wait for the sun to align with a temple doorway to know the time for planting when you could simply look at a calendar on your wall or a clock on your factory floor? The profound knowledge of the architects of light was no longer a matter of survival or spiritual necessity. It became obsolete, a forgotten language. Many of the magnificent structures themselves were repurposed, their stones quarried for new buildings, their passages filled in, their sacred spaces used as cattle sheds, or simply abandoned to the relentless creep of soil and vegetation. The very purpose of their precise alignments was swallowed by time, and the stones fell silent. This great forgetting lasted for centuries, but the seeds of rediscovery were planted in the 1800s as the new field of archaeology began to peel back the layers of history. Early antiquarians, often wealthy gentlemen scholars, would survey these ancient sites, but they were primarily interested in artifacts, pottery, tools, and weapons, not in the empty spaces between the stones or the orientation of a doorway. They saw the structures as tombs and fortresses, not as astronomical instruments. The true turning point came in the 20th century, when a few pioneering individuals looked at these ancient ruins with a completely new set of eyes, the eyes of astronomers and engineers. A Scottish engineer named Alexander Thom embarked on a meticulous, decades-long survey of hundreds of megalithic sites across Britain and France. Armed with nothing more than a theodolite and tape measure, but fueled by an engineer's respect for precision, he began to take incredibly detailed measurements. He proposed the controversial idea of a megalithic yard, a standardized unit of measurement used by Neolithic builders, and his data strongly suggested that these people were not primitive savages but accomplished astronomers capable of remarkably accurate observations. His work, though debated, was the first major crack in the wall of conventional thinking, suggesting there was a sophisticated science encoded in these silent circles of stone. Then, in the 1960s, an American astronomer named Gerald Hawkins supercharged this field with the power of the modern computer. He took the precise measurements of Stonehenge and fed them into an IBM mainframe, asking it to check for correlations between the positions of the stones and the movements of the sun and moon. The results, published in his famous book Stonehenge Decoded, were explosive. The computer identified a staggering number of alignments, suggesting the monument could have been used to predict not just solstices, but also lunar cycles and even eclipses. Hawkins boldly called Stonehenge a Neolithic computer. The archaeological establishment was deeply skeptical, even hostile, to an outsider claiming to have solved the mystery of their most famous site with a machine. But the public imagination was captured completely. The debate itself, however fierce, was exactly what the field needed. It launched the interdisciplinary science of archaeoastronomy, a vibrant marriage of astronomy, archaeology, and anthropology, forcing experts from different fields to talk to each other and take these celestial connections seriously. This revival was utterly dependent on technology far beyond the wildest dreams of the original builders. The laser theodolite allowed for surveys with millimeter accuracy, mapping alignments that were invisible to the naked eye. Satellite imagery and LIDAR scanning began to reveal the true scale and complexity of ancient sites, showing how solitary monuments were often part of vast, interconnected sacred landscapes designed with the horizon in mind. Software like Stellarium now allows researchers to digitally rewind the sky thousands of years, recreating the exact celestial panorama that a Bronze Age priest would have seen from a specific stone altar. Each technological leap has peeled back another layer of mystery, consistently revealing that the ancient world was far more astronomically literate than we had ever given it credit for. This story of loss and recovery is a powerful lesson in the fragility of human knowledge. It shows us that even our greatest achievements can be forgotten, that entire libraries of wisdom can be written in a language of stone and light that we must patiently relearn. The patient work of these modern researchers is more than just academic. It is an act of cultural recovery, a vital mission to preserve and understand these celestial treasures before time and neglect erase them for good. But the story doesn't end with the silent stones of the past. The principles of the architects of light are experiencing a powerful and vibrant renaissance in our modern world, not as forgotten superstitions, but as profound sources of inspiration for how we live, build, and connect today. This ancient wisdom is being reinterpreted through the lenses of sustainability, spirituality, and art, proving that our desire to harmonize with natural light is a timeless human impulse. We see this most tangibly in the cutting-edge field of sustainable architecture, where the old idea of aligning a building with the sun is being reborn as a cornerstone of green design. The Greenwich Millennium Centre in London is a brilliant modern example. This building wasn't designed by druids or high priests, but by architects and engineers who understand that the sun is our most powerful and consistent source of energy and light. Its entire orientation and facade are meticulously calculated to maximize passive solar gain. This means that during the winter months, when the sun is low in the sky, its rays penetrate deep into the building, naturally warming the interior and drastically reducing the need for artificial heating. Conversely, in the summer when the sun is high, cleverly designed overhangs block the intense heat, keeping the building cool. This is the solstice alignment principle of Newgrange or Mnajdra, updated with modern materials and a new purpose, not to mark a spiritual rebirth but to ensure an ecological one. It's a powerful fusion of ancient celestial observation and contemporary environmental responsibility, showing us that looking to the past can be one of the most progressive things we can do. This return to celestial rhythms is just as potent in the realm of modern spirituality and community. Across the globe, there is a growing movement of people seeking connection outside the frantic pace of digital life, and many are finding it in the same places our ancestors did. At Stonehenge, Newgrange, and Chichen Itza, thousands of people from all walks of life, neo-pagans, druids, spiritual seekers, tourists, and the simply curious, now gather to witness the solstice sunrises and sunsets. These are not reenactments or historical pageants. They are living, evolving spiritual practices. For some, it's a direct connection to ancestral traditions and deities. For others, it's a non-denominational moment of profound mindfulness, a chance to stand in silent awe of a cosmic cycle that is far greater than themselves. The shared experience of waiting in the cold pre-dawn darkness and then collectively witnessing that first sliver of light break over the ancient stones creates a powerful sense of communitas, the very same feeling of shared humanity and connection that these sites were originally designed to foster. This modern pilgrimage movement demonstrates that the architecture still works. The stones are still performing their ancient function. They are gathering people together and turning their faces toward the sky, creating a moment of collective wonder and reflection in a world that is often starved of both. Perhaps the most poetic reinterpretation of this ancient dialogue with light comes from the world of art. Contemporary artists like the American James Turrell have dedicated their entire careers to exploring light not as a tool for illumination, but as a physical, tangible medium itself, a subject that would feel deeply familiar to any ancient architect of light. Turrell's monumental works, such as his ongoing Rodin Crater project where he is transforming a volcanic crater in Arizona into a massive naked-eye observatory, are direct descendants of the passage tombs and sun temples of old. He cuts precise apertures in ceilings and walls to frame specific patches of sky, using light to manipulate our perception of space, color, and even time. Standing inside one of his skyspaces where the changing sky above appears as a perfect, liquid painting framed by the opening is a deeply spiritual and calming experience. It forces a slowed-down, meditative state, making you acutely aware of the planet's rotation and the sun's gradual journey. His art, and that of many light and space artists, does not try to represent something else. It uses the primal elements of light and architecture to create an immediate, visceral experience of the sublime. In doing so, these artists are continuing the most essential work of the ancient masters. They are using controlled openings to remind us of the vast, beautiful, and endless sky above, re-enchanting our relationship with the fundamental forces of our universe. This powerful continuity, from a Neolithic roof box to a modern art installation, shows us that the legacy of the architects of light is not trapped in the past. It is a living, breathing invitation to design our lives and our spaces with more intention, to live in rhythm with the natural world, and to never stop looking up in search of meaning, wonder, and connection. However, as our fascination with these ancient wonders has grown, so too has a tendency to wrap them in layers of modern myth and speculation, sometimes obscuring their true brilliance. It is absolutely crucial that we approach this topic with a clear-eyed, critical perspective, carefully separating the well-documented, evidence-based alignments from the more fanciful claims that have emerged. For instance, the concept of ley lines, invisible lines of Earth energy supposedly connecting ancient sites in a global grid, is a persistent and popular idea. While it's a captivating notion that speaks to a desire for a hidden order in the world, extensive archaeological and geographical analysis has consistently failed to provide any scientific evidence for it. The theory often falls apart under simple statistical scrutiny. If you draw enough lines on a map of Europe or Britain, you will inevitably connect a number of ancient sites purely by random chance. This doesn't make the idea any less meaningful to those who find personal significance in it, but it is important to recognize that it is a modern romantic invention, not an ancient belief held by the builders themselves. Similarly, we must be cautious not to attribute every single architectural feature to a celestial purpose. Not every narrow doorway or oddly placed window in an old structure was designed as a solstice tracker. Sometimes a window is just a window placed for practical reasons like ventilation, defense, or simple structural necessity. The constraints of local geography, the available building materials, or even the need to align a building with a pre-existing pathway or river could dictate its orientation. An alignment that seems precise to us might have been entirely coincidental from the builder's perspective. This is where the rigorous tools of archaeoastronomy become so vital. Researchers don't just look at a single alignment in isolation. They perform statistical analyses on large groups of structures. They study the local horizon to see if the alignment actually makes sense for that specific location, and they search for corroborating evidence in the archaeological record, like artifacts or carvings that might indicate an astronomical purpose. This methodical approach allows us to say with much greater confidence that the roof box at Newgrange was intentional, while a similar-looking opening elsewhere might not be. This commitment to critical analysis does not diminish the accomplishments of the architects of light. On the contrary, it elevates and honors them. By stripping away the layers of modern supernatural speculation, we can better appreciate the genuine, tangible genius of what they achieved with nothing but careful observation, patient record-keeping, and incredible engineering skill. Their work was not magic. It was a sophisticated proto-science, a mastery of their environment that is all the more impressive because it was accomplished without any of our modern technology. To romanticize their work by attributing it to lost civilizations or alien intervention is, in a way, to insult their real intelligence and resourcefulness. It suggests that mere humans couldn't possibly have been capable of such feats, which is simply not true. The truth that Neolithic farmers and Bronze Age priests could achieve such precision through generations of dedicated effort is a far more powerful and inspiring story. It connects us directly to our shared human heritage of curiosity and ingenuity. A balanced, evidence-based approach allows us to celebrate their authentic achievements without slipping into oversimplification or mystification, ensuring that we learn from the past accurately and engage with it respectfully, on its own terms rather than through the lens of our own modern desires for mystery. The breathtaking precision of these ancient alignments feels almost magical, but the true engine behind the spectacle is a set of fundamental and predictable astronomical principles. At the heart of it all is the Earth itself, perpetually tilted on its axis at an angle of approximately 23.5 degrees relative to its orbital plane around the Sun. This fixed tilt is the grand conductor of our seasons and the entire reason the Sun appears to wander north and south along the horizon throughout the year. Imagine the Sun's path as a sliding scale. At the summer solstice here in the northern hemisphere, the Earth's north pole is leaning maximally toward the Sun. This means the Sun rises at its most northeasterly point on the horizon, climbs to its highest noonday peak in our sky, and sets at its most northwesterly point, giving us our longest day. 6 months later, at the winter solstice, the situation is completely reversed. The North Pole is leaning maximally away from the Sun, so it rises at its most southeasterly point, traces a miserably low, shallow arc across the sky, and sets far to the southwest, resulting in our shortest day and longest night. The equinoxes in the spring and autumn are the moments of perfect balance between these two extremes, when the Sun rises due east and sets due west for almost everyone on the planet. This predictable, back-and-forth dance of the sunrise and sunset points along the horizon is the celestial clock face that the ancient builders learned to read with incredible accuracy. Without any understanding of axial tilt or heliocentric models, these master observers deciphered this cosmic code through generations of patient, empirical observation. Their laboratory was the local landscape itself. A keen-eyed watcher would note that the Sun didn't just rise in a random new spot each day. It would appear to rise in virtually the same place for several days around each solstice. The word solstice itself comes from the Latin for sun stands still, before beginning its gradual journey back toward the opposite horizon. Over years and decades, they would identify key landmarks on their horizon: a distinctive mountain peak, a notch between two hills, a particular lone tree that corresponded to these extreme rising and setting points. This is the concept of a horizon calendar, where the natural topography itself becomes a giant, permanent measuring device. They might drive a wooden post into the ground or erect a small stone at a specific viewing location. By lining up this foresight with a distant horizon backsight, They could mark the sun's position with remarkable precision. Other methods were beautifully simple. A notched stick could be used to count the days between celestial events, or a circle of stones could be placed with markers indicating the sun's shadow at different times of the year. This was science in its purest form: meticulous observation, hypothesis, and long-term verification. This painstaking process of discovery is what makes their achievements so profoundly human and relatable. It demystifies their work not by reducing it but by elevating it. They didn't have secret knowledge handed down from aliens or lost civilizations. They had sharp eyes, patient minds, and the determined will to understand their world. They recognized a pattern in the chaos of nature and found a way to codify it into stone. Knowing the science behind the solstice alignment at Newgrange doesn't strip the event of its wonder, it multiplies it. The awe shifts from a question of, how could they possibly have done that, to a declaration of, look what human beings are capable of achieving with nothing but curiosity and dedication. Their genius was in translating an abstract celestial pattern into a tangible, communal experience that could be witnessed generation after generation. This foundational scientific understanding is precisely what allows us to study and appreciate their work today with such confidence. Modern archaeoastronomers use powerful software like Stellarium, which can digitally recreate the night sky or day sky from any location on Earth at any point in the past several millennia. Researchers can input the exact coordinates of a site like the Temple of Karnak, dial the virtual calendar back to 1400 BCE, and watch the sun rise on the summer solstice to see if it indeed aligns with a specific temple axis as hypothesized. This technology allows us to filter out coincidental alignments and confirm intentional ones, separating architectural poetry from celestial fact. It also helps us account for subtle changes over time, such as the slow wobble of the Earth's axis known as precession, which very gradually shifts the positions of the stars over a 26,000-year cycle, though it has a minimal effect on solar alignments over the timescales of these ancient structures. By embracing both the spiritual intent and the hard science, we get the fullest, richest picture of how these architects operated. They were not just priests whispering to the gods. They were the world's first astronomers, physicists, and engineers, using the unwavering laws of the cosmos to build a bridge between the human heart and the heavens. This profound dialogue between architecture and light, pioneered by those ancient sky watchers, did not vanish with the decline of their civilizations. Instead, it evolved, weaving its way through the centuries to become a fundamental thread in the very fabric of architectural history. The principles established by the architects of light, using structure to harness, shape, a ND Chinese letter TO illumination, found breathtaking new expression in the soaring Gothic cathedrals of medieval Europe. Here, the heavy, load-bearing stone that defined the dark, Romanesque interiors was seemingly defied. With the revolutionary development of the flying buttress, walls could be pushed higher and opened up, not with small, strategic apertures for solstice beams, but with vast, intricate canvases of stained glass. These were no longer simple windows, they were luminous storybooks. Sunlight pouring through these brilliantly colored panels would project a kaleidoscope of biblical narratives and saints' lives onto the cathedral floor, transforming the entire sacred space into a dynamic, ever-changing theater of faith. Where a Neolithic priest might have witnessed a single beam of light awaken a stone spiral, a medieval worshipper was immersed in a heavenly glow of reds, blues, and golds, a sensory experience designed to elevate the soul and illustrate the glory of God. The intent was different, narrating Christian dogma instead of marking a solar cycle, but the core architectural principle was identical, using controlled light to create a profound, emotionally charged spiritual encounter. This philosophical journey continued into the Renaissance, a period obsessed with order, proportion, and a rediscovery of classical knowledge. Architects like Andrea Palladio looked back to the geometries of ancient Rome and Greece, but they infused them with a renewed understanding of solar orientation. Their villas and churches were meticulously designed around solar geometry, aligning main axes and positioning key rooms to capture the optimal sunlight for both health and symbolic purpose. Large windows were strategically placed to illuminate artworks, highlight symmetrical designs, and create interiors that felt harmoniously connected to the natural world outside. This was no longer about a dramatic, once-a-year event. It was about integrating light into the daily experience of a space, using it to enhance beauty, well-being, and intellectual clarity. The humanist focus of the era shifted the emphasis from solely divine spectacle to enlightened human habitation, yet the underlying drive to choreograph light for a purposeful effect remained a direct inheritance from much older traditions. Perhaps the most compelling evidence of this enduring legacy is how these ideas were articulated by the pioneers of modern architecture in the 20th century. The Swiss-French architect Le Corbusier, one of the most influential figures in modernism, famously described his buildings as machines for living in. But for him, a machine was not a cold, impersonal object. It was a perfectly calibrated instrument for enhancing human experience. Central to this was his concept of the architectural promenade, a carefully sequenced path through a building that was deliberately choreographed to control a person's experience of light, shadow, space, and view. He would design a journey where you moved from a dim, compressed entryway into a sudden, explosively bright living space with full-height glazing overlooking a landscape. He used roof lights, clerestory windows, and strategically placed openings to sculpt light into volumes, making it as tangible a building material as concrete or steel. In his chapel at Ronchamp, the walls are punctured with an array of seemingly random windows of different sizes and depths. Inside, each one acts as a light cannon, projecting intensely focused beams that illuminate specific altars and bounce off the white walls, creating a constantly shifting play of light that feels both utterly modern and deeply ancient, echoing the sacred luminescence of an Egyptian temple or a Maya observatory. This unbroken lineage, from the roof box of Newgrange to the concrete forms of Le Corbusier, reveals something fundamental about the human condition that transcends any specific style or technology. It shows our perpetual desire to build meaning into our surroundings, to create environments that do more than just shelter us. We have an innate psychological response to light. It influences our mood, our health, and our sense of connection to something larger than ourselves. The architects of light were the first to codify this response into physical form, demonstrating that the most powerful architecture engages us on multiple levels simultaneously. It is functional and beautiful, scientific and spiritual, personal and universal. Their legacy reminds every architect and builder who has followed that the best designs are not those that simply follow the latest trend, but those that understand this deep, timeless relationship. They are rooted in a profound respect for the sun's path, a thoughtful consideration of how shadow defines form, and a commitment to creating spaces that stir the human spirit, proving that true architectural genius is, and has always been, about mastering the interplay between solid mass and the intangible, transformative power of light. In our modern world of instant gratification and digital saturation, the enduring legacy of the architects of light offers a powerful antidote to the relentless pace of contemporary life. Their work stands as a timeless invitation to slow down, to step away from the glow of our screens, and to reacquaint ourselves with the primordial rhythms that have guided life on this planet for millennia. They understood something we have largely forgotten, that profound wisdom and a deep sense of belonging are not found in the frantic scroll of a news feed, but in the patient, cyclical dance of the sun, the moon, and the stars. Their structures were not just observatories, they were temples to mindfulness, built to force a moment of pause, of collective breath-holding, as an entire community waited for the universe to reveal its next move. In that shared, anticipatory silence, waiting for a sliver of light to touch a carved stone, they found a connection to something far greater than themselves, a feeling we now desperately seek through meditation apps and wellness retreats. Their greatest lesson is that this connection has been available to us all along, written in the sky above and the horizon around us, waiting only for us to look up and pay attention. This ancient wisdom is not locked away in distant ruins. It is a living, breathing set of principles we can weave into the very fabric of our daily existence. We can start by simply becoming observers again. This doesn't require any special equipment, just a commitment to notice. Notice where the sun rises from your bedroom window over the course of a month. Pay attention to how the quality of the afternoon light changes with the seasons, casting long, dramatic shadows in the winter and a bright, high glare in the summer. This simple act of observation is a form of active meditation, grounding us in the tangible reality of the present moment and the slow, reassuring turn of the natural world. We can take this a step further by intentionally designing our living spaces to honor these cycles, a practice now known as biophilic design. This could mean positioning a favorite reading chair to catch the warm morning sun, installing a skylight to watch the clouds drift by, or even just choosing to leave the curtains open to wake with the dawn. These are small, personal acts of architectural alignment that transform our homes from mere shelters into sanctuaries that celebrate our place within the natural order, helping to reduce stress and foster a profound sense of calm and rootedness. Beyond our personal spaces, we can also look to revive the communal aspects of this ancient practice, creating new traditions that foster connection in our often fragmented societies. The modern resurgence of solstice and equinox gatherings at ancient sites like Stonehenge or Newgrange is a powerful testament to this deep, unmet need. We don't need to be neo-pagans or druids to participate in this yearning for shared, meaningful experience. Organizing a simple potluck dinner to mark the longest night of the year, or gathering friends for a sunrise hike on the first day of spring, are ways to reclaim these celestial milestones as moments of communal reflection, gratitude, and setting intention. These gatherings need not be religious. They are simply a way to acknowledge our shared humanity and our collective journey on a spinning planet orbiting a star. They are a chance to tell stories, to share food, and to collectively witness the unwavering reliability of the cosmos, a powerful reminder that some cycles remain constant, even when our human world feels chaotic and uncertain. Perhaps their most profound lesson is one of patience and collaboration. The grand solar observatories of the ancient world were not the product of a single genius working alone. They were the culmination of generations of shared knowledge, meticulous observation, and communal effort. A master builder would never live to see the final, perfect alignment of a temple he designed. He had to trust that his children's children would complete his vision with the same care and precision. This long-term perspective is a stark contrast to our culture of quarterly earnings reports and rapid-fire trends. It teaches us the value of investing in projects whose full fruit we may never see, of planting trees under whose shade we will never sit. It's a lesson in building for a future beyond our own lifespan, a form of stewardship that is desperately needed as we face global challenges like climate change. Their legacy shows us that the most enduring human achievements are born from a blend of meticulous science and elevated spirit, from the unshakable data of the gnommon's shadow married to the soaring myth of a sun god's journey. They remind us that we are at our best not when we choose between logic and wonder, but when we fuse them together to create something that nourishes both the mind and the soul, building a world that is not only functional but also sacred. This fascinating intersection of stone and sky, of myth and mathematics, is the primary focus of a dedicated scientific field known as Archaeoastronomy. Think of it as a kind of academic detective work, a discipline that deliberately straddles the line between the hard science of astronomy and the human-centered fields of archaeology and anthropology. Its core mission is to unravel how ancient cultures perceived the cosmos, not as we understand it today with our telescopes and physics, but through their own unique cultural and spiritual lenses, and then to understand how they embedded that celestial knowledge into the very bones of their architecture and the fabric of their daily rituals. Researchers in this field are the modern-day decoders of the architects of light's blueprints. They arrive at ancient sites with more than just brushes and trowels. They come armed with theodolites, GPS units, and sophisticated software, meticulously surveying the alignments of doorways, the sight lines from altars, and the orientation of entire ceremonial complexes. They then cross-reference these precise physical measurements with historical records, indigenous oral traditions, and mythological texts, piecing together a holistic picture of how a society's understanding of the sun, moon, and stars directly influenced when they planted their crops, how they worshipped their gods, and where they laid their ancestors to rest. The field owes a great debt to pioneering figures who fought to have these celestial connections taken seriously by our often skeptical academic establishment. One of the most influential names is Anthony Aveni, often called the father of modern archaeoastronomy. While earlier researchers like Alexander Thom and Gerald Hawkins focused primarily on the megalithic sites of Europe, Aveni turned his attention to the Americas, fundamentally expanding our understanding of cultures like the Maya and the Inca. He didn't just look for alignments, he immersed himself in the cultural context, studying surviving codices and colonial-era accounts to interpret what those alignments actually meant to the people who built them. His work at the Inca site of Machu Picchu, for instance, revealed how certain structures were perfectly oriented to mark the rising of the Pleiades star cluster, an event that signaled the beginning of the planting season in the Andes. He demonstrated that the Inca used carefully placed pillars on the horizon to track the sun's solstitial extremes, creating a public, horizon-based calendar that was visible to the entire community. This approach, blending celestial mechanics with cultural anthropology, is what sets modern archaeoastronomy apart, transforming it from a simple search for solstice lines into a rich, nuanced exploration of ancient worldviews. However, this interdisciplinary detective work is not without its significant challenges and pitfalls. One of the most persistent difficulties is the fragmentary nature of the evidence itself. We are often trying to reconstruct a complete astronomical system from a ruins that may be missing key stones, whose original roof has long since collapsed, or whose surrounding landscape has been dramatically altered by millennia of erosion or modern development. A window that once framed a star might now be blocked by a forest that didn't exist 1,000 years ago. This leads to the constant risk of confirmation bias, sometimes uncharitably called the old astronomy trap, where a researcher, eager to find an alignment, might unconsciously emphasize data that supports their theory while ignoring measurements that don't quite fit. Furthermore, the field must constantly guard against ethnocentric bias, the temptation to interpret ancient structures through the narrow lens of our own modern Western scientific perspective. It's a mistake to assume that every alignment was intended for a purely practical, calendrical purpose. A window facing the winter solstice sunrise might have held a deeply spiritual significance that we can no longer fully grasp, a meaning tied to a specific myth or ancestor veneration that left no written record. The true challenge for the archaeoastronomer is to humbly acknowledge the limits of their understanding, to avoid imposing modern logic on ancient thought, and to let the combination of hard data and cultural context guide their interpretations. Despite these complexities, the revelations brought forth by this field have been nothing short of revolutionary, forever changing our perception of ancient ingenuity. Archaeoastronomy has systematically dismantled the outdated notion of prehistoric people as primitive superstitious nomads, revealing them instead as meticulous observers of their environment and brilliant engineers of their world. It has shown us that astronomy was never a separate, abstract science for them. It was an integral thread woven directly into the tapestry of daily life and spiritual belief. The farmer checking the horizon for the heliacal rise of Sirius was also participating in a religious ceremony, the priest timing a ritual to the moment the sun entered the inner sanctum was also demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of solar mechanics. This holistic view, championed by archaeoastronomy, allows us to see these ancient cultures in their full complexity, as societies that saw no divide between the temple and the observatory, between the myth and the manual, between the rhythm of the heavens and the rhythm of the human heart. By bridging these artificial gaps between disciplines, archaeoastronomy doesn't just study old stones. It helps us hear the echoes of an ancient conversation between humanity and the cosmos, a dialogue written in light, shadow, and the enduring desire to find our place in the universe. Yet this surge of interest brings with it a profound and pressing responsibility, one that extends far beyond academic curiosity. We must now confront a crucial ethical question. How do we engage with these sacred sites in a way that honors their original purpose and the living communities who still hold them dear? For many of these monuments are not abandoned relics of a dead past. They are active, living heritage, deeply sacred to descendant communities for whom these stones are a direct link to their ancestors, their spirituality, and their cultural identity. The winter solstice at Newgrange isn't just a tourist spectacle. For many, it remains a powerful spiritual event. The Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan is not merely a pile of ancient rubble. It is a place where contemporary indigenous peoples may still come to pray and make offerings. To treat these places as mere open-air museums or backdrops for social media photos is to fundamentally misunderstand their significance and commit a deep act of cultural disrespect. This requires a complete shift in perspective from seeing these sites as artifacts we own and explore to understanding them as treasures we are privileged to temporarily borrow and are obligated to protect. The physical impact of modern tourism presents one of the most immediate threats to this preservation. Consider the silent, cumulative damage of erosion. Each footstep on an ancient stone staircase, each hand placed on a carved wall for balance, might seem insignificant, but multiply that by thousands of visitors a day, every day for years, and the effect is devastating. The very act of loving these places to death is a real danger, as delicate carvings are worn smooth and original surfaces are gradually destroyed. Beyond the slow grind of erosion, there is the more overtly damaging behavior. The tourist who feels compelled to add their own modern graffiti next to a 5,000-year-old spiral, or the visitor who climbs a restricted section of a pyramid to get a better photo, inadvertently loosening stones that have been in place for millennia. During peak celestial events, these pressures are magnified. The solstice gatherings at Stonehenge, while largely peaceful and respectful, still require massive cleanup operations and constant monitoring to prevent damage to the stones and the surrounding landscape. The challenge is immense. How do you manage the human desire to experience wonder without allowing that wonder to be trampled into the mud? This is where the role of international and local organizations becomes absolutely critical. Entities like UNESCO, through its World Heritage Site program, provide a vital framework for protection. Achieving this designation isn't just about prestige. It unlocks access to international funding, expert conservation resources, and a global commitment to preserving a site's outstanding universal value. But UNESCO doesn't simply build a glass box around a monument and put a "Do Not Touch" sign on it. The most effective preservation strategies are those that skillfully balance protection with education and controlled access. This can take many forms. At some sites, this means constructing sensitive viewing platforms that keep visitors on a designated path, preventing them from scattering across fragile archaeology. At others, it involves implementing a ticketing system that limits the number of daily visitors, reducing crowd pressure and creating a more contemplative experience for everyone. The money raised from these tickets and responsible tourism can then be funneled directly back into ongoing conservation work, creating a sustainable cycle of care. The goal is not to keep people out, but to manage their interaction with the site in a way that ensures it will be there, intact and powerful, for the visitors of the next century. Ultimately, the most important shift must happen within each of us as visitors, scholars, and enthusiasts. Ethical engagement begins with a simple but profound act of mindfulness. Before we visit, we must take the time to learn about the site's cultural significance, not just its architectural stats. We must follow the rules, even when no one is watching, staying on marked paths, not touching the carvings, and respecting any areas that are cordoned off for a reason. During a solstice event, it means understanding that we are guests at a ceremony that is, for many, deeply sacred. It means observing with quiet reverence rather than loud entitlement, using our cameras discreetly, and being aware that our presence is part of a larger, shared experience that should not be disrupted for a selfie. For researchers, this ethical duty is even more acute. Modern archaeology is increasingly collaborative, involving descendant communities from the initial planning stages of a dig all the way through to the interpretation and display of findings. It's about asking permission not just for access but for understanding. It's about recognizing that scientific discovery must never come at the cost of cultural desecration, and that some knowledge may be meant to remain with the community, not published in an academic journal for the world to see. This ethical stance is the only way to ensure that the wisdom of the architects of light endures. If we exploit these places for profit, trample them for entertainment, or study them with colonial arrogance, we risk severing the very connection we seek to understand. We turn living bridges to the past into dead curiosities, but if we approach them with humility, respect, and a commitment to preservation, we become partners in their ongoing story. We honor the ingenuity of their builders by ensuring their creations stand for millennia to come, and we respect the descendants of those builders by listening to their voices and honoring their enduring bond with these sacred landscapes. This isn't about locking the past away in a vault. It's about forging a sustainable relationship with it, one that allows the stones to continue speaking their ancient truths to generations yet unborn, in a world where light and respect are held in equal measure. Even with all we have uncovered, the work of the architects of light remains shrouded in compelling mysteries, each unanswered question a tantalizing invitation for future exploration. For every site like Newgrange or Chichen Itza, where the purpose of an alignment is strongly supported by evidence, there are dozens of other structures whose celestial secrets remain locked away. Consider the vast and enigmatic plain of Nazca in Peru, famous for its giant geoglyphs. While the animal figures capture the public imagination, it is the hundreds of long, straight lines crisscrossing the desert that truly puzzle researchers. Some of these lines have been found to align with the rising or setting points of important celestial bodies on the solstices or other significant dates. But was this their primary purpose? Or were they part of a more complex, yet to be understood system of pilgrimage routes, water rituals, or territorial markers that also incorporated astronomical knowledge? The sheer scale of the phenomenon suggests a coordinated, society-wide effort, but the precise motivation behind aligning these pathways with the heavens is a mystery that continues to spark fierce debate among scholars. The tools to solve these puzzles are advancing at a breathtaking pace, opening up new frontiers of discovery that were unimaginable just a generation ago. Light detection and ranging technology, or LIDAR, has been nothing short of revolutionary for the field. This method involves firing millions of laser pulses from an aircraft towards the ground and measuring how long they take to bounce back. By stripping away the dense canopy of a jungle or the layers of soil and vegetation covering a landscape, LIDAR effectively lets us see the ground beneath, revealing the ghostly outlines of ancient cities, roads, and ceremonial centers that are completely invisible to the naked eye. In the jungles of Cambodia, LIDAR scans of the area around Angkor Wat revealed a vast, sprawling urban complex that rewrote our understanding of the Khmer Empire's size and sophistication. In Mesoamerica, similar surveys are continually uncovering new Maya structures, suggesting their astronomical networks. The connections between observatories, temples, and marker pyramids were far more extensive and interconnected than we ever previously believed. Each new digital map is a fresh treasure trove of data, offering potential new alignments to investigate and forcing us to reconsider the scale of ancient astronomical practice. This wave of new data is so vast that it has sparked an exciting movement towards citizen science, inviting the public to become active participants in this archaeological revolution. Universities and research institutions are now creating online platforms where anyone with an internet connection can help sift through terabytes of satellite imagery or LIDAR data, looking for the telltale signs of ancient walls, mounds, or earthworks. This isn't just busy work. Amateur enthusiasts have made genuine, significant discoveries, identifying potential archaeological sites that professional researchers, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information, might have missed for years. This collaborative approach does more than just accelerate discovery. It democratizes it, breaking down the walls of academia and allowing people from all walks of life to feel a personal connection to unraveling the mysteries of the past. It transforms the study of ancient astronomy from a remote academic pursuit into a global, collective effort, a fitting tribute to the communal spirit in which these structures were originally built. Perhaps the most profound question that future research may help us answer is the degree to which these ideas traveled across the ancient world. We see the same underlying principles: the reverence for solstices, the use of horizon calendars, the serpent symbolism tied to light appearing in cultures separated by vast oceans and thousands of years. The current academic consensus heavily favors the theory of independent invention, the idea that different cultures, faced with the same sun and the same human mind, naturally arrived at similar solutions. But as we uncover more about the sophistication of ancient seafaring and the surprising extent of long-distance trade routes, a more nuanced picture is emerging. Could there have been a faint, slow diffusion of core ideas? Not a direct blueprint for building a pyramid, but perhaps a shared underlying concept, like the importance of tracking the sun's lowest point in the sky, that traveled along trade routes and was then adapted into local architectural styles and mythologies. Future discoveries, perhaps an artifact with a blend of cultural motifs found in an unexpected place, could provide the missing link that helps us understand the flow of celestial knowledge in the ancient world. This ongoing exploration ensures that the field of archaeoastronomy remains vibrantly dynamic, a living science that is constantly evolving and refining its understanding. Every new technological breakthrough, from ground-penetrating radar that can peek beneath stone floors without lifting a pickaxe to isotopic analysis that can trace the geographic origins of a skeleton found at a sacred site, adds another layer to our comprehension. The journey to fully understand the architects of light is far from a closed book. It is an ever-expanding map, with each new discovery adding a crucial piece to the grand puzzle of human history. It reminds us that our relationship with the cosmos is a fundamental, enduring part of the human story, and that the final chapter on how our ancestors read the sky is still being written, inviting us all to stay curious, humble, and awestruck by the ingenuity of those who came before us. The incredible thing is that you don't need a time machine or a long-distance plane ticket to step into the shoes of these ancient sky watchers. The legacy of the architects of light is not locked away in textbooks. It's a living, breathing invitation for you to engage with the cosmos right now from your own home or local park. For those with the opportunity to travel, nothing compares to the visceral power of witnessing these celestial events in person. Imagine standing among the thousands of people gathered at Stonehenge for the summer solstice sunrise, feeling the collective anticipation build in the cool morning air until that first sliver of sun breaks the horizon directly over the heel stone, and a wave of cheers and drumming washes over the crowd. Or traveling to Chichen Itza during the spring equinox to see the famous serpent of shadow and light slowly slither down the side of the El Castillo pyramid, a phenomenon that transforms an archaeological site into a theater of living myth. These pilgrimages are about more than just sightseeing. They are about participating in a human tradition that stretches back thousands of years, sharing a moment of awe with people from all over the world who are drawn to the same profound mystery. If a trip to a major ancient site isn't feasible, you can harness the power of modern technology to bring these alignments to life on your own screen. There are fantastic, user-friendly apps available that act as a personal planetarium in your pocket. Applications like Sun Surveyor or PhotoPills allow you to use your smartphone's camera to see an augmented reality overlay of the sun's path across your local sky for any day of the year. You can stand in your backyard and point your phone to see exactly where the sun will rise on the winter solstice, or determine the best date and time to photograph a sunset perfectly framed by your city's skyline. For a more historical focus, software like Stellarium or websites like Time and Date allow you to input any location on Earth and then wind the cosmic clock backwards, simulating the precise night sky that would have been visible from the Giza Plateau in 2500 BCE or from a Maya city-state during a pivotal historic event. This digital toolkit allows you to become an armchair archaeoastronomer, testing alignments and confirming for yourself the incredible precision of these ancient builders from the comfort of your home. For a deeper, more guided exploration, the world's great museums and cultural institutions have embraced the digital age, offering unprecedented access to their collections and expertise. Many now host extensive virtual tours of their archaeological exhibits. You can often explore high-resolution, 360-degree scans of passage tombs or zoom in on ancient artifacts with intricate celestial iconography that you could never see this closely behind a glass case in a crowded gallery. Institutions like NAS, a night sky network, or local university astronomy clubs frequently host free online workshops and star parties, where experts teach the basics of naked eye astronomy and how to identify the same constellations and planets that were so important to ancient cultures. These resources demystify the science and provide a structured way to learn the skills of an ancient observer, connecting you with a community of fellow enthusiasts and experts who can answer your questions and share your fascination. Yet, the most profound connection might be the simplest one to make, requiring no technology at all. All it takes is a willingness to wake up early and find a clear view of the eastern horizon. Choose a significant date. The next solstice or equinox is a perfect place to start. Find a hilltop, a quiet beach, or even just a park bench facing east. Bring a warm drink, leave your phone in your pocket, and simply watch. Notice the subtle changes in the color of the sky before dawn, the chorus of birds that heralds the coming light, and then the precise point on the horizon where the sun first appears. That point will be different from where it rose a month ago, and it will be different again a month from now. In that quiet moment of observation, you are performing the same fundamental act as a Neolithic priest or an Egyptian astronomer. You are reading the horizon, you are marking the sun's journey, and you are feeling your own place within the grand, turning mechanism of the solar system. This personal, unmediated experience is a form of mindfulness that grounds you in natural time, a powerful counterbalance to the artificial rhythms of the digital world. Finally, the journey doesn't have to end when the sun is fully up. The modern equivalent of gathering around the fire to share stories is sharing your experiences and photos online. There are vibrant communities on social media platforms and dedicated forums where people post their images of solstice sunrises, lunar standstills, and attempts to recreate ancient alignments in their local environment. By sharing what you've seen and learned, you contribute to a growing, global repository of modern observations. You might help someone else identify a previously unknown alignment in their area, or simply inspire a friend to go out and look up for themselves. This act of sharing transforms a solitary moment of wonder into a shared cultural practice, continuing the essential work of the architects of light in a new digital age. It proves that their legacy is not just in the stones they left behind, but in the enduring human impulse to seek meaning in the light, to track our journey through time, and to share that awe with others, ensuring the celestial conversation never truly ends. The legacy of the architects of light is far more than a collection of ancient ruins. It is a timeless testament to the profound human desire to find our place within the vast, beautiful machinery of the cosmos. These master builders from across the ages and continents showed us that the deepest truths are often found at the intersection of disciplines we so often keep separate today. They wove together the empirical precision of science, the transcendent yearning of spirituality, and the expressive power of art into structures that did not merely shelter the body, but nourished the soul. In their carefully aligned windows and doorways, designed to capture a single beam of light on a specific day, they created a universal language, one that speaks of our enduring quest to understand time, to honor our ancestors, to communicate with the divine, and to find meaning in the great cycles of existence, from the turning of the seasons to the ultimate journey from life into death and whatever may lie beyond. As we stand here today in our world of artificial light and digital immediacy, their work offers us a crucial and poignant invitation to slow down, to look up, and to reconnect. It calls us to rediscover the rhythms of the natural world, to find awe in the predictable yet magnificent dance of the sun, and to cultivate a sense of reverence for the intricate systems that sustain all life. Their spirit was one of patient observation, of creative problem-solving, and of a deep, abiding respect for the world around them, qualities that feel more essential now than ever before. We can carry their legacy forward not by trying to rebuild their temples, but by embracing their mindset. We can design our own homes and communities with greater intention towards light and the seasons, we can make time to witness the solstice sunrise from our own local horizon, and we can approach the mysteries of the universe with both a scientist's curiosity and a poet's wonder. This journey through the world of ancient astronomy and sacred architecture doesn't have to end here. I would love to hear about your own experiences in the comments below. Have you ever visited one of these incredible sites and felt that connection to the past? Perhaps you've witnessed a solstice event at Stonehenge, felt the silence inside Newgrange, or even just have a favorite spot where the light falls in a special way at a certain time of year. Share your stories and thoughts. Let's continue this conversation as a community of curious explorers. If you enjoyed this delve into the myths and mysteries of history, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the forgotten corners of our shared human story. Thank you so much for spending this time exploring the architects of light with me. May your own path forward be ever illuminated by curiosity, wonder,